Hi, thank you for joining us again. I wanted to discuss politics once again today, and the politics of knee-jerk reactions. Because, first of all, it's very sad to me that I've had people unfriend me and block me on social media, Facebook and so forth, because of I wouldn't say even it's a support for Trump. I don't particularly support him more than just the fact that he's the president. I'm not a big fan of his, but he's doing a much better job than I expected, and I was certainly not condemning him, and I certainly don't see his reaction to Charlottesville as any reason to condemn him. Even though a lot of folks do, even people who did support him, feel that way, I still don't find that to be so. I'm not that offended, not offended at all by anything that he said about Charlottesville. As far as I'm concerned, everything he said is true. And I think the vast majority of people who are finding fault with that have a preconceived notion, have a foregone conclusion that they are going to oppose Trump, and then work backwards from there. You know, there's two things I can compare this to. The scientific community will generally say that those who call themselves creation scientists are not scientific because they don't follow the scientific method, because they have their conclusion first and then they work backwards, meaning the conclusion is God created the world literally in 6 days, around 6,000 years ago, less than 10,000 years ago. That's the conclusion, and now let's look for evidence of this conclusion, and that's not how the scientific method works. And so therefore a creation scientist who will not accept any other conclusion cannot be considered scientific. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean he's wrong. He could be 100% right. Science might not be the be-all and end-all, particularly when you have revelation. Might be right, might be wrong, even in the context of revelation. Of course, there may be ways to say that the Bible is the Word of God, and yet these words are allegories and not meant to be taken literally. And we really have no way of knowing which is true. For sure, I think anyone who believes in God believes that God created the world in an intelligent way, created the universe, created everything. But does that mean that the world is necessarily a certain age and all these things? And all these things have been debated over the years. These are not new debates. I myself was more of a literist at one point in my life, and now I'm more of it doesn't matter. It's meaning what matters is the essential dogmas that we believe that God created the universe, that God that God gave the Torah, that the Torah is true. Those are essential dogmas that we do believe. But the truth of the Torah doesn't necessitate a literal interpretation. It could be or could not be. And to me, either way is kosher, essentially. That's as long as we accept those basic dogmas. And I study both sides, and I'm interested to hear both sides of the story. But it's neither here nor there. The biggest argument from a Torah perspective of taking things literally is in a mikveh Yotzei Midei Pshuto, that our sages tell us that the scripture generally does not leave its simple meaning. And if we understand the scripture in a simple way, and certainly much of our halachic construct is built around young earth creationism. Some will say that's talking about just Adam, but the big kasha on that would be Birkas Hachama. Why do we have Birkas Hachama on a Wednesday? There's every 28 years we say a blessing to thank God for the sun, which is apropos to discuss today, having had the eclipse, and last time we had that about 7 years ago. It's interesting how the next major eclipse in America, which will be much greater in New York than this one was, it's going to be 7 years from now, and I think that's right in the middle of that 28-year cycle, right in the middle. 14 years in, 7 years from now, it was 7 years ago that we had Birkas Hachama, and it's going to be on Rosh Chodesh Nisan, and we always recite Birkas Hachama during Chodesh Nisan, and all of these things point to belief in young earth creationism. However, there are many Bali Machshava, many Jewish philosophers and teachers and so forth who had a less literal approach. Certainly the approach that's closest to creationist literalist approach would be Rav Victor Miller. I remember meeting him on a few occasions. He's quite an impressive person, just impressive to be in his presence. And yet, even many of his own students have different approaches, and that's fine. That's how Judaism works. We don't, as long as we accept those basic dogmas that we accept of the truth of Torah and the truth of God, and that God was the creator, these other things are details which are not as important, and yet we can examine both. And there have been attempts which are quite fascinating, even from a scientific standpoint, to make compromises to show that in a certain sense both are true. And we can, you can find online Professor Gerald Schroeder, even though it's even controversial in the Torah circles, his presentations are quite impressive if they are not necessarily universally accepted. But they're fascinating and interesting and kosher. You could believe this, you don't have to. But he essentially says that Elu ve'elu, that in a sense that the world is both 6,000 years old and 14 billion years old, and scientifically, mathematically, he proves that, and that's neither here nor there. That's not really what we're talking about. But the thing is that still essentially, from a scientific standpoint, that's not how we do research or find answers. Meaning, same thing, if you the story goes like this. There's a mashal from the Dubner Maggid, a parable from the famous Maggid of Dubna, the famous preacher of Dubna, who told many great parables. And one parable, he said that he went to the forest and he saw a whole bunch of arrows that were perfect bullseyes. And he's like, who was in trees and different places all over all over the forest and finally found the archer, and he said, "You are the most expert marksman, the most expert archer in the world. Every arrow you shoot is a bullseye. How do you do it?" And he said, "You want to know the real secret?" He said, I shoot the arrow first, and then I draw the bullseye around it." And that's what, that's been compared to how missionaries work, often looking in our scripture to find proofs for their beliefs. And many people do that. And that's also what's going on here with what we call young earth creation science. It's not to denounce creationism, but to show how it's not truly scientific. But the left today says science doesn't matter anymore, because if science says, X chromosome, and an X chromosome is a woman, and an X chromosome and a Y chromosome is a man, that's what science tells us. But then the left will say that it could be different. So, which is fine if that's how society wants to be, but if they do that, they can't call out other people who have different approaches to finding truth other than science, whether it be the question of creation versus evolution, question of man-made global warming, all these other questions that exist. But essentially here, and the thing is, I love all my friends, even those who absolutely, totally hate the president. I don't have a drop of enmity. I disagree, and I think it's wrong, really, especially for people who are visibly Jewish, to overreact in such a way, because this is a man who is the furthest thing from a Nazi. I mean, a Nazi doesn't put on the yarmulke and go daven by the Koisel. At least a Goyish Nazi doesn't. Maybe a Jewish Nazi would, but what he's talking about. How can you call him a Nazi and a racist, anti-Semite, this and that, when you look at all of his grandchildren are Jewish, all of his daughter's Jewish, his son-in-law is Jewish, and his daughter-in-laws are Jewish. All of his grandchildren are Jewish. He was good friends with Al Sharpton, Jesse Jackson. There are pictures of them together. There's something going on here that's not normal. I mean, to accuse this man of racism is the furthest thing from the truth, and it's wrong. Meaning, if you want to argue with his policies, you want to argue, that's fine. You want to question his personal stature. Well, he's not he's no saint. It's not like George W. Bush, who was a pious born-again Christian, even though he wasn't his whole life, but he turned his life around and things. This isn't Donald Trump, and he never claimed to be, and it wasn't Ronald Reagan. And the thing was, in a way, it was Jimmy Carter, and that didn't make him any better. And essentially, from a scriptural standpoint, we see outright pagans. King Darius, who's a Zoroastrian, is called Mashiach several times in the Bible. Is called Messiah, the Anointed One. He's appointed by God. And so too, there's a messianic aspect with every leader, even leaders of other nations. It doesn't mean that they're Mashiach Tzidkenu, what we're waiting for. It doesn't mean they're the Messiah, but there is a certain appointment by God to perform God's will by leaders. And I want to apologize, I'm not feeling so well. if I'm seeming a little out of it today. And so no, and yeah, he has a checkered past. Yeah, he has a lot of problems, but so does everybody, and it doesn't really matter. What's he doing? Meaning, is saying that communists and Nazis are both evil somehow supporting Nazis? I don't think so. Is saying that in marches that had a whole bunch of different people with totally diverse views on both sides, to say that there were fine people on both sides, is that saying that everybody on both sides were fine people? No. And he's right, there were fine people on both sides. And this has been recorded in the media. You know, I read it in Richmond.com, not really such a right-wing periodical. Not a particularly left-wing one either, but a more middle of the road, and it's saying how many folks who support that these statues should remain are upset by virtue of the fact that the Nazis have hijacked their cause. Now again, you can argue on both sides of this statue issue, and I see both sides of it, and I think it should be left up to local places. I don't think anything should be destroyed. I think there are possibilities that certain things like this should be removed and placed in a museum, so we don't forget what happened, so we don't start entering into denial of history. But perhaps they don't necessarily need to be out in an honorific way. But then the question is, again, where do we draw the line? Because there's a tax on people that America has held to be heroes for a long time. And you know, there was an old episode of The Simpsons. I think it might have been the second or third season. It's hard to believe how long ago that was. Over 25 years now. Sometimes almost 30 years. And on The Simpsons, Lisa found out a whole bunch of nasty things about Jedediah Springfield, the founder of their town. That he was actually a pirate, and all of these horrible things about him. And she gets up, she wrote a whole essay about how evil Jedediah Springfield was, and how all the things that people thought about him were lies. And how he said a noble heart and begins the smallest man. And one teacher said to the other, I didn't hear the word "embiggen" until I came to Springfield. She's like, well, why not? It's a perfectly cromulent word. So, as she gets up to read her essay, Lisa, on this day that was celebrating Jedediah Springfield, she looks into the crowd, and she says, I have something to say about Jedediah Springfield. And she looks at these old people, and one old lady, she says, what would Jedediah say, and show him honor. And everyone was so excited to see a little 8-year-old girl who was going to read this essay. And she said, I've done some research on Jedediah Springfield, and I have to say, and she looked at all those people, and she's like, he was really great. He was really great. And then brother asks, why didn't you read your essay? And she said, sometimes people need their heroes. The thing is, in that case, Jedediah Springfield was actually a villain, and there was total historical revision. And yet, someone so liberal like Lisa Simpson understood the importance of not ruining their heroes. Someone like Columbus maybe was questionable. But the thing is that Washington and Jefferson, at least in my book, were great, great heroes. Yes, they were flawed, but they were men of their time. I mean, one thing I've said often, does anybody think if Thomas Jefferson were alive today, would he turn around and say, I want to own some slaves, He didn't want to own them when he was alive. He was stuck with them. But does anyone imagine that that's what he would do? But that's neither here nor there. Does anybody think it crosses Donald Trump's mind? Oh, what would be nice if I had some slaves? I mean, seriously? But the thing is, it's more than that. This whole story now. Even forget about any conspiracy theories, is that we don't know what really happened that day. We shouldn't jump to any conclusions on either side what really happened in Charlottesville, but it just seems apparent to me that most of the people who are finding fault in Donald Trump are like the archer who shoots an arrow and draws the lines around it, circles around it, draws the target around it. It's like a person who like we talked about the creation scientists, they have a foregone conclusion, and we're looking for evidence of what we believe already. Whatever the truth is doesn't matter because we have our conclusion already. And it just seems to me, at least what I see, that Trump has not crossed the line yet. And I don't think he will, because I don't believe that's who he is. And the thing is, for other folks, as soon as he decided to run as a Republican, because he could have just as easily run as a Democrat, and he would have won as a Democrat. As soon as he decided to run as a Republican and run against Hillary Clinton, he was guilty. I mean, that's what's really what this is about, and it doesn't matter what he does. Meaning if he says something nice and positive, well, it's a dog whistle, it's a this, it's a that. No matter what he says, it's all there's nothing to be said. All right, that's how it is. I don't know. Maybe you disagree. I don't know. I mean, the thing is, I think most people, there's a lot of that on both sides. I think there was just as much of these knee-jerk reactions to Obama. I certainly have a visceral issue with Hillary Clinton since my youth, since I'm a teenager. So I could never imagine to vote for Hillary Clinton, nor could I even bring myself to vote third party, meaning if Bernie Sanders were running against, and I hate everything Bernie Sanders stands for, if Bernie Sanders were running against Donald Trump, I would have felt comfortable enough to vote third party. I probably, even though I would have wanted to vote for the Constitution Party or something that wasn't available, I probably would have voted for Gary Johnson, to be honest. Which is what I know other people who I know did. It's just, I really felt that, I mean, if it was Trump versus Sanders, they would both be evil, and it would be hard to say who's the lesser of two evils. But since it was Trump versus Hillary, it was very, very clear that Trump was the lesser of two evils. At least that's how it was to me. And the thing is that, like I said, he's done a lot better than I thought he would. I'm quite happy with how he's conducted himself as president. He's gone above and beyond his expectations, but partially because the expectations I had for him were so low. But he has not, at least to me personally, I mean, I've heard all the arguments, and it just doesn't seem to me that he's crossed the line. What seems to me is he's doing his job, and he's doing it well, and he's right. To me, he's totally right to what he said, and I think everybody who has nasty things to say about Donald Trump should listen to his speech at the Holocaust Museum on Yom HaShoah this year, and you'll see who Donald Trump really is. And also, I think everybody should listen to his reactions, all three reactions that he gave to Charlottesville in their entirety, and see what he actually said, and I think he's right. thank you for watching. God bless you. Please like, share, and subscribe. And comment. I'd really like to further this discussion. I mean, this is particularly for some of my friends, personal friends, and friends on Facebook who disagree. Just prove to me that I'm wrong with what I'm saying. I'll admit that we do the same thing. We did the same thing with Obama and with Clinton and Jimmy Carter. Drawing the circles around them as well. There's really not much of a difference. Except this is taking it further. No, I mean, what things to me, the things what Obama did were much worse. You know, in Obama's White House, things like Watergate and the Teapot Dome scandal and those type of things. Things 10 times as worse happened on a daily occurrence, but because the media loved him, he got away with it. That's my personal feeling. But again, everybody is entitled to their own feelings about that. But his whole thing was riddled with tremendous corruption, but he got away with it. And here, Trump, I have yet to see in his presidency any corruption. That's not to say it didn't exist in his business dealings and things like that, but I'm talking particularly in his presidency. He's doing quite an amazing job. Much better than I hoped. Much better than I expected. I'm not 100% happy with him. I would have much rather had Ted Cruz, personally. I would have preferred almost any of the other Republicans to Trump. But he got in, and he won. And he might be a time traveler, since his uncle had all of Nikola Tesla's paperwork and stuff. And there is a whole book about Barron Trump being a time traveler also, and all these things. That there was a book 100 years ago with a picture that looks very much like Barron Trump and his adventures as a time traveler. And all these things are quite possibly true. You never know. They're very entertaining and interesting, even if they're not true. And that's how it is. But maybe that's how he won. I don't know. Who knows? There's other videos on YouTube that discuss this. It's not really my place. So thank you for watching. God bless you. Please like, share, and subscribe, and comment. And looking forward to discussing more. All right. Thank you.